Okay, so let's talk about what happened on August 7th, 2025. OpenAI dropped something that, honestly, might be one of the biggest tech revolutions we've seen yet. We're talking about GPT-5. So today we're going to break down exactly what makes this launch so monumental. But before we dive into the nuts and bolts, let me just ask you this. Imagine, what if you had an actual PhD-level expert for any subject you can think of, available on demand 24/7 right there in your pocket? I mean, really think about that, because that right there is the promise of GPT-5.
And look, this isn't just some marketing hype. At the launch event, OpenAI's Sam Altman just framed it perfectly. He said, and I'm quoting here, "With GPT-5, now it's like talking to an expert, a legitimate PhD-level expert in anything, helping you with whatever your goals are." You know that one idea? That's the key. It's the key to understanding this absolutely massive leap forward.
So let's start right there with that idea, the PhD in your pocket. Because we need to be crystal clear. This isn't just some minor incremental upgrade. No way. This is a fundamental, ground-up shift in what AI is even capable of.
And to really get a feel for this leap, it helps to kind of look back at the journey. Altman gave this great analogy. He said GPT-3 was like a high school student, sometimes brilliant, but honestly, a lot of the time, kind of annoying. Then came GPT-4o, which was more like a college student, genuinely smart, pretty reliable. But GPT-5? Well, that's the final evolution. That is the full-fledged PhD expert.
Okay, so that's a cool analogy. But it is just an analogy, right? So what's actually going on under the hood? What's the tech that justifies calling this a leap in intelligence? Well, let's dig into the actual data. All right, so this jump from college student to expert, it really boils down to a few critical upgrades. First, the reasoning is way more advanced. It actually shows you its work, its logic, step by step. It's also now fully multimodal. We're not just talking text and images anymore. Now it's audio and video too. And on top of all that, it's faster and, this is the big one, it is so much more reliable.
And I really want to double-click on that reliability point, because it is absolutely critical. Get this. According to OpenAI's own numbers, GPT-5 has a 45% reduction in hallucinations. Those times the AI just makes stuff up. 45% less than GPT-4o. That is a gigantic step forward for actually being able to trust what it tells you. So, okay, we have this newfound intelligence, this huge boost in reliability. The big question is, what can this PhD expert actually do? This is where things get really exciting. This is where we get to the concept of software on demand.
So first up, let's talk about making complicated things simple. Just imagine, for a second, you're trying to help your kid with their physics homework. And maybe, just maybe, you're a little rusty on the subject yourself. We've all been there. Well, at the launch event, Elaine Yala from OpenAI showed this amazing demo. She gave it a simple prompt about the Bernoulli effect, the science that explains how planes stay in the air. And boom! GPT-5 generated a fully interactive visualization right there on the screen. As she put it, GPT-5 can just bring any hardcore concept to life in moments. It's like having an instant, personalized science museum at your fingertip. Okay, that's cool. That's really cool. But let's push this even further. What if you could build a whole app, a complete piece of software, just by describing what you want? This is where that software-on-demand idea just blows my mind. Jan de Boer stood up and said he wanted to build a really nice, interactive web app to help his partner learn French. So he just asked GPT-5 for it. And within minutes, it generated all the code for an app complete with flashcards, quizzes, and it even threw in a French-themed snake game where a little mouse eats cheese. Incredible.
Look, these demos are technically super impressive, right? But the real story here, the one that really matters, goes beyond just the wizardry. It's about how this kind of power can show up in our lives when it counts the most, shifting from just a technical tool to something that enables a real human connection.
And nothing captures this better than the story of Carolina Millen. She talked about getting a biopsy report, and she said, "I completely panicked." And in that moment, she did the first thing she could think of. She took a screenshot of that complex, terrifying medical report and just dropped it into ChatGPT.
And the result? She said, within seconds, it translated this complex report into plain language that I could understand.
and in this moment of overwhelm and panic, had a little bit of clarity. I mean, think about that. This is AI delivering not just data, but clarity, understanding, in a moment of absolute crisis.
But it didn't stop there. Her husband, Felipe, pointed out that the new model went even further. He said that GPT-5 didn't just translate the words, it seemed to anticipate their needs. It understood, as he put it, the question behind the question. It started suggesting next steps, things to ask the doctor. It wasn't just a translator, it became an empathetic thought partner. Now, obviously, having this kind of power, it brings immense responsibility with it. We have to talk about that, which leads us right into the crucial topic of using this power safely and, well, responsibly.
So how do you actually wield this power effectively? Well, it all comes down to becoming a master of the prompt. The source materials lay out a few key steps. First, be super specific. Tell it the tone, the audience, the goal. Second, define your restrictions, like, hey, keep it under 200 words. Third, give it examples to copy. And finally, iterate. If the first answer isn't perfect, rephrase your question. Think of it less like a command and more like a conversation.
And let's be real, we have to talk about the major challenges here. The sources are pretty clear about the big risks. The potential for plagiarism, the fact that factual errors can still happen, the very real disruption to the job market, and of course, massive data privacy concerns. These are the tough questions that we're all going to be grappling with.
So what's OpenAI's plan for this? Well, one of their new approaches is something they're calling safe completion. Here's the idea. Instead of the AI just saying, I can't answer that when you ask something tricky, it tries a different path. It aims to be as helpful as it can, but within safe boundaries. So maybe it answers your question at a really high level, or it guides you toward a safer way to find the info you're looking for. It's a much more nuanced way of handling things.
You know, all of this, it brings us to one last pretty critical question. We spend a lot of time asking, what will the future look like? But when you see tools like this, you have to start wondering, maybe the real question is the future already here?
Because this transformation, it's not theoretical. It's already happening. We're seeing projections for a huge impact across major industries like finance, healthcare, and education. And it's not just talk. It's already being put to the test by huge companies like the financial giant BBVA and the life sciences leader Amgen. They're using it right now for everything from incredibly complex financial modeling to actual drug design.
And that brings us full circle, right back to where we started. I asked you at the beginning to imagine what you would do with a PhD expert in your pocket. Well now, after seeing all of this, the question isn't hypothetical anymore. It's real. You do have a team of experts in your pocket. So the only question left is, what are you going to build? What will you create? What problems are you going to solve?